quicker. So okay. So just want to give everybody a heads up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lisa Moss. I'm currently serving as president of the college. I thought we would start with introductions, and since all of us don't appear the same way on our screens, I thought maybe what we could do is start with the Brac reps going in order by First Circuit, and then follow by the Regional Activities Committee people who are present, starting by circuit. So if we want to start with the Brac reps.
All right, so First Circuit is Samantha. She's not here.
Not here.
I'm not sure all of us know who's in what circuit. So.
You're 9 north with Oregon, yeah, and Washington State. So anyway, so Third Circuit is Yona, who was here.
I am here. I just had to unmute myself.
There she is.
I'm for the Third Circuit and the DC Circuit. So.
And you want to just say what you do? I mean, I know probably everybody.
I'm sorry. I'm an attorney I'm an associate general counsel with the AFL-CIO in Washington, DC.
Great.
Okay. Fourth Circuit is Cynthia Sass. So Cynthia.
I am a plaintiff's attorney in Tampa, Florida, and I have the 4th and 11th Circuit.
And then Rod Tanner is 5, 6, 7.
Yes, all in a row.
Right.
I'm a union attorney in Fort Worth.
And Rod's got the 5th, 5, 6, and 7 is the liaison. So
right.
Barb, are you 8th? No, Diane.
Diane King. I do what Cynthia does, plaintiff's employment law in Denver, and I have the 8th and the 10th.
Right. 9 north for, well, California, right? And 9
that's
south.
Ted Borromeo. I have 9th north and south, and that also includes Arizona and Nevada. We have a few fellows there. I'm former in-house counsel at McKesson Corporation.
And his 9th north is Northern California, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And then Luella is
Far north.
Right. Far north. Right. Right.
So I have Oregon, Washington, Alaska, I think maybe Idaho and Montana, but I don't know how many people we got there. But anyway, I'm Luella Nelson. I'm an arbitrator and mediator, and I have my main office in Portland, Oregon, but I also have an office in Oakland, California, which is where I am right now.
Right. Thank you. And I think everybody knows that, but all of the former introductions are people who serve on the governing board of the college. So maybe we can go to the First Circuit regional representatives.
That's me, Ellen Kearns. I'm with Constangy Brooks in Boston, representing.
Can only hear you.
Yeah, Ellen, I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing you.
Sorry about that. Let me try it again. My name is Ellen Kearns, and I'm with Constangy Brooks in Boston, and I represent management.
Thank you. And second?
That's me, Daryl Gay. I'm a partner at Aaron Fox, and I represent management, and I'm in New York City.
Thank you. Third?
Hi, I'm Dean Burrell. I am a full-time neutral based in Morristown, New Jersey.
Okay, and fourth?
Brad Suggs with Ogletree Firm, management side, Greenville, South Carolina.
Thank you. Fifth?
I don't think we have anybody from the 5th.
Okay, and sixth?
I don't know whether I'm such a person or not. This is the first I've ever heard of this. So it's Charlie Warner, the Porter Wright firm, and I'm in Ohio.
Okay.
The 6th Circuit is one of those that has one for Ohio, which is where Charlie is, Diane Subley, who's from Michigan, and then Lisa Krupika, who is in Tennessee. And I think we had somebody who was in Kentucky, but there hasn't been much activity in Kentucky. So hopefully Diane will be able to top on. So
Thanks, Susan. Looks like Joe's not here for the 7th. 8th.
So,
Rod, you're, yeah.
No, it's Joe Schmidt.
Okay.
yeah, and for the 8th, we don't have Joe Schmidt on, but I can speak for him because I'm very familiar as a member of the 8th Circuit. My name is Barb Giacola, by the way, everyone. I'm a board member. I'm the person on the board that's in charge of Brac, and we'll be explaining in a bit all the roles and expectations that come with both Brac and RAC. So thank you, Lisa.
Okay. 9th.
So are you doing 9th North or 9th South? There's several
9th North.
For Oregon. And for, actually, none of the 3 are here. So for Oregon, we have Will Aitchison. For Washington State, we have Mike Riley, who is not available. And for Northern California, we have Jeff Bosley, and none of them are available. For 9th South is Gail Glick, and she is not available today either. You want me to keep going on? Because a lot of these people aren't here.
Yes, why don't you go ahead, Susan?
10th Circuit is Larry Marquis. He's in Denver. He is not available. Tim Palmer and Leslie Dent were for the 11th Circuit. Leslie is in Atlanta, and Tim actually is in Birmingham by way of Nashville. He was when we started a long time ago. Tim was in Birmingham. He's just kind of stayed on the committee at this point to continue work. For DC Circuit is David Fortney, and I think Scott Oswald is on. So if Scott wanted to.
Okay. And then we also have Sean McGee. Thanks, Sean, for joining. Although we haven't had a regional activities committee per se in Canada, one of my initiatives as college president has been to try and have more cohesion between the US and Canadian fellows. And so we've invited Sean, why don't you go ahead to participate in this with the hope that it will, lead to more activities in Canada.
Thank you. So I'm Sean McGee. I'm with an office called Raven Law in Ottawa, and I do employee side litigation and union side labor work.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Just briefly, in 2018, the strategic plan was adopted by the governing board of the college. And part of that strategic plan, which is on the college's website, is to promote regional activities to increase fellow involvement in the college. And since the strategic plan, I think we've come a long way through the board regional activities committee and the regional activities committee. As we've moved on, there have been some questions about roles of different people in Brac and the regional activities. And I thought it would be helpful if we all got together to at least get a better understanding of what the roles are and hopefully to exchange ideas and concerns we have in these roles. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan to explain item number 2 on the agenda, which is the board regional activities and its role within the college.
So the Board Regional Activities Committee, which we affectionately call BRAC, as you will hear us say, is the members of this meeting that we've already introduced so far, which is Yona Rosen, Rod Tanner, Luella Nelson, Ted Borromeo, Diane King, Cynthia Sass, and Samantha Delaney, who's not with us today. All these people are members of the board. They've all been assigned various regional areas or circuits within our college membership within the country. And they are all basically the liaisons between the board and the regional activity committees. So their role is to help facilitate and keep moving activities within the regional committees that they're assigned to. Does that pretty much cover it, Lisa?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And then if you have questions on any of the items on the agenda before we move on to the next one, just don't hesitate to raise your hand and we'll get all the questions answered. Okay, Barb, I'm sorry, Barb, do you want to go ahead and start with the general expectations of the Brac members? And again, Barb is chair of Brac. So go ahead, Barb.
Thank you. As we're doing this, as Lisa has said, please ask questions. The reason why we're recording this is there was going to be no perfect time to get everyone on for an orientation. But our hope is that this orientation will enable other people to watch so that they have an appreciation for the information we're providing and they themselves can help make what we need to have happen in the different regions happen. And so don't think there's any question that you can't ask. We really want you to ask questions, and there'll come a point where we're going to ask you to share your information, which will also be important, not just for the people on this Zoom conference, but for the people who will be listening in subsequently. So Brac started under Homer Deakins, and he did an awesome job. He was very good about creating a group of liaisons at the board level who, as indicated, interacted with the various regions to make sure that things happened at a regional level. The whole purpose of this is to not have the college just be a once a year gathering where we have a seminar and then have the dinner where we recognize the new fellows. Certainly that's very important to all of us, and many of us absolutely love that day. But additionally, we hope the college has real activities locally and regionally so that people feel the worth of the college. This is not unlike other colleges do. You know, probably the first college we might have all been familiar with was the American College of Trial Lawyers, which meets once a year at a conference, but then they also do things locally or regionally to make a difference in their areas. And so when we talk about how do you make a difference, it can be educationally, it can be from a collegiality standpoint, or both. What do we expect from the liaisons? We expect the liaisons will work at their regions to help ensure that meaningful activities happen in the regions. And when we say meaningful activities, it can be one per region annually. It can be multiple per region annually, and it depends on what is best for that region. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more, but basically we're not looking. And so please, regional activity coordinators, understand this. We're not looking for our board members who have kindly agreed to be liaisons to do the lion's share of the work. Quite the contrary, we're looking for those people who are in leadership at the regions to figure out what's best for their region and to make it happen using the liaison for assistance or information as necessary. What we're looking for the liaison at the board level to do is just to ensure that things are happening in the regions. Does anybody have any questions? If not, Lisa, we can move on to the next.
Okay, Susan, if you want to give us an explanation of the Regional Activities Committee and its role in the college.
So as as I'm assuming you all can follow, once we set up our BRAC, our board liaisons, the intention was then to go out and populate committees, which were referred to as our regional activities committee, the RAC. That being said, the RAC, you all are considered the heads of, I'm not going to say the chairs, maybe you are the chair. Some of you aren't even sure, like Dean Burrell, this is Dean's first encounter. So Dean might be going, wait, I didn't say I was going to be the chair, but Dean is the one of the three that are kind of part of that committee that was available to be on this call. So we asked him to do it. As Charlie mentioned earlier, Charlie's been doing programming through Ohio for a while. So when he said, I didn't even know this was a thing. So this is part of it, is to, help everybody kind of be on the same page with what it is that they're doing. And then find other like-minded fellows that want to assist in regional activities within your area. So we've tried to staff those, kind of give you suggestions, reach out to people. I know Daryl is part of the Second Circuit, and they certainly went and found all their people themselves, and people that were interested just kind of was like, yeah, put me in, I want to be on it, I want to do it. So it just kind of, Fred reached out for each state in the Fourth Circuit and invited people to be on it. Again, there's different ways that you can do it. Some was through osmosis, like the Second Circuit, and some was, Fred did some legwork to get some people to agree to be on the Regional Activities Committee. So, and I didn't know if you wanted me to go into the differences between some of the circuits. I just want to say like a couple of important points, that need to be raised, is that the reason of this structure and this format is more to make sure that we're not stepping on people's toes who are planning things. We certainly want regional groups to plan things, but sometimes we've had occasions where two groups have gone and planned something, it's on the same day, it's going to compete with each other. We're just trying to avoid that. So I think there's also, communication with like the higher powers, so to speak, is always important. Keep your regional, liaison, your BRAC liaison person, or me at the very least, in the loop as to what's going on and what you're planning. I think we also want to make sure that activities are publicized. So, if there's somebody that's going to be in town that wants to go, realizes that somebody's going to have something, in Philadelphia, there's going to be a dinner or a cocktail reception or a get together that they can also attend. We can do that. But again, it's kind of everybody, we're not trying to over structurize everything. I don't think that's a word. I think I just made it up. But we certainly want to keep everybody kind of on brand. You know what I mean? That they're not off planning their own things and we don't know about what's going on. So that's why it's important to kind of communicate with me at the very least, but hopefully your board regional activities committee liaison person. So that's all.
Okay. Any questions before we move on to Barb? Okay, Barb, do you want to go ahead then and talk a little bit about the general expectations of the Regional Activity Committee members?
Yes. So what I want to do now is to talk about what we expect from people that are in the regions. And then I want to tee up some of the ideas that we have that you can do in your region. So what we expect from the people who are in the regions, and the reason why we look for a leader or two in each region is just for the sake of ease of the liaison, so that the liaison has a person or two in a particular region who agree to take charge. But the one thing we are looking to do is to have this be fluid so it works for every region the way that region needs, because we recognize there are differences across the nation. both as to how people interact and as to what the need may be of a particular region. But what we're looking for the regional leaders to do is to conduct appropriate activities throughout the year. It's as simple as that. And let's talk about what we mean by appropriate activities. So I'll deal with the 8th Circuit because before I became the chair of the Brac committee, I was the person that oversaw the 8th Circuit. So I did the 8th Circuit. Diane now has the 8th Circuit along with the 10th. But in the 8th Circuit, if you look at the 8th Circuit, it's a really broad geographic expanse, and it includes a lot of states. So it includes the Dakotas, and there's only one fellow in North Dakota. And it just, if you go all the way down, it basically is the middle section of the United States in large part, not including Texas. But the result of it is that you have a great number of states, some that are heavily populated with fellows, some that are less heavily populated with fellows. So in what we did as an 8th Circuit was we put in place, and this is something that worked well, and it's a great format for those of you that want to do it, but we put in place a person or two in every state. And why do I say or two? If you can get two, we like to. I'll tell you why. We don't like one state to just have necessarily one constituency heading it up. Because again, we want the feeling of collegiality and inclusiveness. So we tried in the 8th Circuit to have two people at least from every state, one who would represent the plaintiff/union, one or neutrals, and one who would represent management. And then we had a call, an organizational call, and we said, what do you see the needs in your state to be? And for us, doing it by state made the most sense. Again, because of the great geographic spans and the fact that the needs were different. What we came to realize was that in the states that were heavily populated with fellows, there wasn't a lot of need for webinars or actual conferences, CLE conferences, because there was so much CLE being done in other ways. So then we said, okay, people, if that's what's working in your region, then pivot and figure out what in your region would be meaningful to the fellows. And we'll talk in a second about that, but that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Let me take another area. Take Pennsylvania. Now, I'm not from Pennsylvania, and I hope what I'm saying doesn't offend or surprise anyone, but I am told that the difference between Philly and Pittsburgh is monumental, and the two are not they're not alike. And so the thought of doing something in Philly is not going to work necessarily for Pittsburgh or vice versa. So in that area, what our goal was to get someone from Pittsburgh and someone from Philly. And to the extent those two groups could work on something that would make sense for Pennsylvania, they could, but otherwise they would ensure that something was happening of meaning for the fellows in their area. And so that's the kind of thing that we've done. This largely gets self-funded because there isn't money available in the college to do anything extensive. From time to time, the College Board has allowed there to be a little bit of money, but it's not a lot. And so you should work towards doing it on your own. You will be surprised how easy it is, though, to obtain that funding through the generosity of law firms on both sides of the fence. So think about that as you're doing it. The types of things that we think can be done that are important, and we can circulate this list, but for right now, everybody please recognize these are things that have been done in various geographic areas with success. One important feature is to help us identify potential fellows for your area or another area, but someone you know. And when you're doing that, we look for you to please pay attention to underrepresented constituencies and to make sure that we have good representation among various protected classes, because we see the college as an inclusive organization. And as you know, we have a lot of different constituencies in it, from the plaintiff union, neutrals, management, etc. And it's important that we continue to have that broad representation. One of the ways that Brac helped tremendously was the organization, the board, even back before I became the board's coordinator of Brac, the board was concerned that there weren't enough union members. And back then, one of the board members called me on the 8th Circuit and said, can you help me get more union members? You know, if you look at Minnesota, you've got a large number of fellows, but not as many union members as we would like. And so we worked very hard on identifying. It wasn't that we didn't have people that merited it. We did. It's just that people hadn't been as thoughtful as they should have about making sure that we included those people that were warranting being in the college as college members. And we went out of our way to address this and nominate fellows that work. And Lisa then, as last year, even before she became the head of the organization, last year she started an effort that the Brac committees helped with tremendously. So that's one thing you can do. Second, you can conduct remotely, but as Susan has indicated, with all of these activities, we should be coordinating them through Susan and Jen Motley, because they do help with it. And then they also help ensure that we don't have competing things, because we don't want one group competing with another group if they're both hosting webinars that people might like to attend. The third thing that you can do is social events. So in Minnesota, we do a social event every year to welcome the new fellows. And we've started to do that in the summer, so we don't have to deal with Minnesota winters. And we do it at someone's home. I did it last year at my home, and 3 of us pitched in to pay for it. This year, Joe Schmidt has agreed to do it at his home. And so the fellows come for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just last year they didn't leave. It started at 5:30 and they were still there at 8 o'clock talking away, which was wonderful because it had a very collegial feeling. And while we were there, we talked about people we knew that we might consider, placing for fellowship in the next round, that sort of thing. But you can do happy hours, you can do lunches, you can do dinners. And those have had tremendous success, particularly in areas where there's a saturation of CLE and there isn't a need for the CLE. The college has a civility video that was done by Alan Berkowitz, or under his leadership. And that is a fantastic video, and it's something that you can use regionally. I think a good way to use it is plan on having a CLE on civility, play the video, and then have regional speakers talk after the video's played about their concepts of civility. To me, that's one of the most important things the college can serve a purpose on, not just with our own membership. Our own fellows better be civil. I can tell you, if they aren't, they don't become fellows. And I'm well aware of people who were told, sorry, yes, you've got the credentials otherwise, but the civility's lacking. And that's a problem for us. But I think it's important for us to be educating newer lawyers, including maybe law schools. So that's a way that we can serve, even in an area where there's a lot of CLE. doing a CLE on civility and opening it up to newer lawyers, where we as college members are trying to have them understand the importance of civility, is huge. And I can't stress enough how civility and professionalism can make a huge difference. I don't think, new lawyers understand how much it matters when you're dealing with really high profile, hotly contested issues, to have lawyers on both sides of the fence that get along and respect each other. We did a survey at one point, and we learned from two fellows that because of their fellowship, they were in an opposing counsel. Because of their fellowship, they were able to bring something to a resolution, even though their clients were at loggerheads. So we can make a difference. Law school outreach is another way, and we can do outreach both in civility and just in terms of educating on what labor and employment is. And then we have a mentorship committee, and it's separately run outside of Brac, but we can be there to help the mentorship committee as they need. And then the last thing that has happened that I'm aware of, which I'm sure and hope Diane will speak about, is that in the 10th Circuit, for example, they did not just meetings where they talked about items of interest in the labor and employment field, but then other meetings, they picked things that were of interest just globally, like women's rights as it relates to other countries. So that's just a smattering of things that can be done. And I know the next item on the agenda, Lisa, is to have everybody here share what's been done successfully. So I will stop and simply ask if anyone has any questions. And if not, I think we can go on to all of you helping educate us on things that work.
Okay. If there are no questions, Scott, Oswald, I don't know how we skipped you in the introductions, but maybe you could go ahead and introduce yourself. And Diane, I think she came on later, so maybe you could introduce yourself as well.
Lisa Krupika did too.
Okay, sorry.
I'm Scott Oswald. I represent employees
in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. Happy to be here.
Diane?
You're muted, Diane. You're muted.
Are you looking for Diane King? I already introduced myself.
No, Diane Subley.
Oh, Diane Subley.
Okay.
There you
go. There you go.
Hi, I'm Diane Subley. I represent employers. So we already have people across the aisle. And I'm based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm an adjunct in Chicago.
And Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Krupika. I'm management in Memphis. I'm head of my firm's labor and employment law section.
Okay. And thanks for joining us.
Can I just mention one thing before? I just want to go back to something that Barb had mentioned, and I don't mean to. I think finding sponsorship for activities is important, where Barb was talking about. But I also want, with the recent increase in our dues, there is money that we've allocated in the budget this year to help do these, receptions. So, or I know there's been one in Denver. We did one. We just did one in Boston. So, if there's a need to charge to attend some of these things, which we do for some because they're more than a couple of $100, that's something that you might have to consider. But if there's a nominal amount of money that's needed to put on something, please contact us and let us know, and we'll see if we can help. But by all means, if there's people willing to sponsor, firms that are willing to let their space be used for a reception or whatever, Seyfarth has done it many times for the Second Circuit New York dinner program. So And I know that Diana's had things that she's done in Michigan. And so there's a lot of history that goes back and forth. I'm just saying, if there's a need for money, please contact me and let's talk about it.
Yes. And just to the point of how you can do things inexpensively, you know, clearly if you do something at someone's home, the expense is simply whatever beverages are consumed and some food. Doing things in a law firm's conference room is another way that cost can be minimized. If you do things out, in a public setting like a restaurant or something, it's more expensive. Although I don't think most people mind saying, I'm happy to pay, $15 to attend an event, expecting that that'll cover, a drink or two and some food.
Okay. I just want to emphasize before we move on to the different circuits and what's going on, that what works in one circuit does not necessarily work in another. And I think creativity in these activities based on the circuit becomes really important. I think there has been feedback from different circuits about what may have worked and what may not work. So I thought we would just take some time to go through the circuits to talk about some of the activities that either have already transpired, are planned, and what may work and what may not work in the particular circuit. So for the first circuit, Samantha's not, Ellen Kern, if you want to go ahead and maybe talk about what's going on in your circuit.
Let me also, before we get started, say one thing. It's hard to know what success is for any region. And I think you have to define for yourselves what you consider to be success. And I also think you have to realize that it may take time to build up the momentum. So the first time we ever did a reception in Minnesota, I think there were maybe 6 people that seven maybe, that attended it at Joe's. Joe Schmidt did it at his law firm. The next time we did something, and people were there about an hour, the next time we did something, there were 15 to 18 and more people were staying longer. So it can, number one, take time to build up interest. But second, even for the one that we first did when there were only 6 or 7 of us, it was meaningful. And to me, it made the college something more than just a November meeting and the newsletter and, the other things we've done. So, one of the things we'll get into is all the webinars that happened in COVID. The college has become, incredibly more active, and that's been wonderful. So I'll be quiet, but I just wanted to say, please share what's been successful, but also share what hasn't and what you learned out of it and what you're thinking going forward. And I know some groups have struggled. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I know some groups have struggled trying to get people in their area to sign up and do things. Talk about that and talk about what you think would be helpful. And I even think, Lisa, we could just open it up for discussion so that if people had an issue in one circuit and and someone from another circuit had an idea, they could just jump in and say, hey, try this, or did you try that, or whatever.
Okay, well, why don't we start with the first, and everybody, this is intended to be interactive, so anybody, please just join in. Ellen?
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, you're.
Okay, let's try this again. I would divide our activities into pre-COVID and post-COVID, because during COVID, we just were not able to do anything except have some Zoom meetings, which were modestly accepted, but less than 10 each time. And so what we've decided to do is to try the mentor program that was first started down in Dallas, Texas. And to do that, we are recruiting mentees and mentors. And we have co-chairs of this committee. And we met with the Bar Association. We have a Boston Bar and a Mass Bar. And we ran into a little snag because they did not want to send out the announcement of the mentorship program using their email addresses of members. So we're trying to work around that. But at any rate, we believe we've set modest goals. We only really want between 10 and 15 mentees and 10 and 15 mentors. So in the Region 1, we have 72 members, but we've decided to limit the mentorship program to the greater Boston area. Our region covers Maine and New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, but we've decided just to limit it to see if we can have a successful program. The college, as you may or may not know, actually has an official mentorship document that it sends out, and it wants the chairs to follow this document. We've run into a couple of snags with respect to that document. In particular, the document requires that we do a conflicts check with respect to the mentor-mentee relationship, and that we have a confidentiality agreement. And there's been some pushback from our members about signing those things. However, I would say in general, there is enthusiasm for having the mentor program. And we have committed to having 4 meetings a year between the mentors and the mentees to kind of talk about things and how's it going, et cetera. So maybe next year at this time, I'll be able to tell you if it worked or what our issues are. If we can't get 15, it's hard to say that it's a representative number if the mentorship program is big enough to draw any conclusions. I think in Texas, they have 12 mentors and 12 mentees or something like that. And we would also accept 12. It's a lot of work to match the people up, to set up the meetings, to set up the calls to go back and forth, to work on the conflict issues. So we're not thinking of having anything else with the members of the college for the next year. But we may change. That's currently what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. I'm assuming that on the conflict issues, you've been in touch with the Dallas group on how they handled it.
Well, Susan Wan is looking into I think she was going to go to the draftees of the document and ask them why they drafted it that way. But I have not reached out to Dallas yet.
I reached out, I got a response, and then I just actually responded, got another, there's been a little back and forth. So I'm working on it, Ellen, and I think that what's going to ultimately end up happening is the Dallas group and you are going to have a conversation. So we'll figure it out.
Okay. If no questions, Daryl, do you maybe want to talk about what's been going on in the Second Circuit?
Sure. Historically, what the college really did in the Second Circuit was hold about 2 seminars a year, which they mostly invited people who were in the Second Circuit area to come to. During the pandemic, I kind of started getting active in the whole regional thing and kind of marshaled people to come together, both to put together seminars to address some of the evolving issues and approaches that might be necessary for us to share with each other, as well as we engage in interaction. We've been pretty fully connected with a lot of the government agencies. I reached into a lot of the agencies and basically asked them, as they were formulating ideas and new provisions and rules that might apply to us as in our respective practices and apply upon our clients, if they would be willing or interested in having feedback. from this diverse body of ways to deal with this issue, and we got very good feedback. So we interacted with city agencies, state agencies, and a few federal agencies where they would make proposals of what they're looking to do, and we would review that and give them brainstorming thoughts back and forth of how that would work. We found that very interesting and productive. Those are two things. I like the idea of the reception concept. We haven't done something like that, or the mentor program. So I'm going to talk to my committee about those ideas.
Okay. Any questions of Daryl or comments? Okay, Dean?
Yeah, I want to make one if I could. So one of the things that Daryl's group helped with was when COVID reared its ugly head and remote CLEs became something that was very important to all of us in a way in many states that certification entities pivoted to allow you to get your required CLE. Daryl's group really took a lot of the laboring ore in getting CLEs that were done not just in New York, but pushed out to the entire college, which was, good, really good. And they were great CLEs. The thing I think you need to think of if you're going to do a CLE that isn't an in-person CLE is if you're going to be offering it as a webinar, I think, and Susan, I hope that you and Lisa will help guide this conversation a little bit, but if you're going to be doing it as a webinar, I think two things to think of. One, is it really a local issue? So for example, if you're in the 8th Circuit, are you going to talk about a major change in the 8th Circuit that happened in the labor and employment area, and people want to talk about how the standards changed because the 8th Circuit said something it had never said before, maybe with respect to a burden of proof issue or something, and people wanted a intellectual discussion of that. Or in which case you'd be using 8th Circuit lawyers, right? Or is it going to be something that's going to have a broader appeal? And then if it has a broader appeal, I think the question you have to ask yourself is, do you use people just in your area, or are you reaching to lawyers outside your area? And again, most important, coordinating, because one of the things that Susan does do, and I'm sure you've all seen it, is when a group's hosting something, she lets it be known to everyone that something's being hosted. Again, because if someone, even not from your circuit, happens to be in your area and you're hosting, Daryl, for example, if you hosted a reception in New York and I happened to be in New York at the time, I'd attend in a heartbeat. It'd be fun to see the fellows from that area. So that's another way that coordination becomes very important. Susan, do you want to talk a little bit about what your thoughts are with respect to things that would be available for other people to attend because they're done remotely?
Barbara, can I just interject first, just on the issue of the CLEs and seminars we did? The last session we did, which some of you might have attended or at least know of, was we did one on the McLaren decision on the non-compete issues, which you thought as a committee was going to be a broad perspective of interest. But another reason we made that national was because when we did an event in the fall, last fall, we did one, we thought we had gotten past COVID and people would come out. And to do that, and we thought we'd make it attractive by bringing government officials we thought people would want to come. We had Jennifer Bruiser, we had two members of EEOC commission, the vice chair, and another commissioner from the EEOC. And we thought that the fact that we had these individuals with this high-ranking ability, there would be a large turnout of people to come in this in-person meeting to connect with them. We were shocked. We had less than 30 people show up. And, it was a really low turnout comparatively. So, I think we're in a new age right now of two factors. One, from New York perspective, we used to do the seminars pre-pandemic at 6 o'clock at night. We'd go to about 9 o'clock at night. We'd have, serve dinner and stuff like that. We're finding people don't want to stay late in the city any longer. So if they're going to come out at all, they're going to do it in the daytime, not at nighttime. And two, people have gotten accustomed to doing CLEs from their homes or their offices, and they don't want to go somewhere they don't have to go. So I urge people to really consider whether or not they'll get the kind of turnout they want. And then each region might be different, but in New York, we found that was an issue to be concerned about.
Sean, did you want to ask your question before?
Yeah, well, it follows up on what I've heard so far, and especially what Daryl has just said. And I wasn't sure whether the focus was fellows providing CLE or activities for fellows, or whether it was the idea that this would be the college, yes, reaching out to fellows, but actually reaching out to the broader bar or practice communities in the various circuits. And I'm wondering what, I guess, what the rules are and what the practical application has been.
Well, so Sean, to tell you, and our perspective was we thought that as fellows, our job was not just to educate our fellow members, but also to reach out to the broader bar and offer our guidance and direction on some of the issues during the pandemic, how to do a deposition, how to do a arbitration, do mediation. The one we thought of non-competes was broader, so we thought it was important to invite everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, and I think that in general, Sean, that again is something that the group has to decide what they want to do. They can reach out to the greater area. They can just keep it to themselves. They can deal with law students. They can, deal with younger associates at their firms and bring them all together. I don't know, you could have two, people that want to host something for younger associates. Anyway, not that they've done that anyway. But I think that it really just depends on what kind of an idea you come up with that is ultimately showcasing for or the college or other people showcasing the college and the information, and the resources that our fellows can provide. So, some people say, I want top level. I don't need the intro, CLE. I also don't know that a lot of people want CLE. Going back to Barb's request, I guess, for me is that, we have the 11th Circuit has hosted a regional weekend, not a regional weekend, they've done a CLE weekend program. They've coordinated that with the 5th Circuit, they've coordinated it with the 4th Circuit. We invite everybody who wants to come. Most of the time, I would say 90% of the people that come are from the circuits, affected or whatever. We try to have speakers. But I don't, honestly, that's a lot. And when we say, oh, the CLE is what you need to get people to come, I can tell you that I literally just sent out an email to all the attendees from the February program saying who wants a certificate of attendance so that you can self-report your CLE. And I got 3 requests and that was it. So I don't necessarily know, which kind of goes to my point that CLE is something that you have to take care of elsewhere. CLE is so different in every state, and I don't know that I any longer have the bandwidth to manage that and everything else. So that's why CIFAR ends up helping us with the ones that are out of the New York area. They'll do the CLE for us. I get everything together for them. It's just another component of keeping that in mind. Sometimes people just like the conversations. I think, Diane, you've done them where it really was an interesting speaker that came and talked. And the guy who was that labor and employment lawyer that ended up going to Afghanistan and serving in Afghanistan, which was like, wasn't he helping like Afghani lawyers or some type of legal system within? Like, it's just fascinating. It ain't CLE, you know what I mean? So it just comes back to what it is that your group will enjoy. And I also will tell you that to Daryl's, when they expected such a huge turnout last October in New York, the 9th Circuit South in LA did one, and they paired it with a baseball game. So it was the Padres and the Angels were playing each other. And okay, great, we're gonna get everybody in Southern California that's a fellow is gonna wanna come. So they did a dinner on Friday night. They did a program at one of the fellows' offices hosted it. I forget, it was on 2 different topics. And then they went to the baseball game that night. And I'm telling you right now, they could barely sell 10 tickets, 15 tickets to go. So,
which is why I say you have to decide what's success and what will serve the fellows in your area. To me, again, to the point of CLE, one of the ways you can handle if you're going to do a CLE is just to give a certificate of attendance. you have to be smart, because in some jurisdictions, to attend, a person has to enter a code to prove they attended or something. I know that's necessary, I think, in New York. So if we're doing a CLE in Minnesota that's for everyone nationwide, we have people enter a code to prove they attended. But there's different ways that can be done. You'll have to know ahead of time. And remember, it's just Susan and Jen, so there isn't the bandwidth for them to do what they need to. But in most places where you're doing these things, you have law firms that are already hosting webinars anyway. So you probably have someone who's incredibly familiar with what the requirements are and can just tell you. And the CLE organizations are quite willing to give you the information you need. And there's some places where you just have to recognize, chances are they're never going to recognize it. My understanding is Virginia, good luck trying to get CLE approved that's done nationwide in Virginia, because nothing you can do, no matter
Yeah, it's just
even if you have,
difficult.
even if you have a Supreme Court justice speaking, it's not necessarily good enough for that.
No, they want written materials for everything. So
Yeah, and even when you have exceptional written materials, it's sometimes not enough. So you just have to go into it with your eyes wide open and say ahead of time what your expectation is.
I also want to just point out, Barb, that one of the things that, yes, firms need to kind of, you need to definitely have that logistics detailed planning, if you can, from the firms of the fellows that are on the committee, hopefully. But Jen and I we have all of our email distribution lists set up, so we can send out emails to Michigan fellows if there's going to be something in Michigan, or Sixth Circuit, and we can send those out. We can keep the RSVPs, we can, when Daryl does, when they do their webinars, I set up the website so people can register and we can keep track of it. And, so there's, I got thrown into the COVID fire of webinars that summer, and Daryl's like, well, just plan it, you can do it. I'm like, no, so I learned it. And
I believe in you, Susan. I believe in you.
Daryl. But anyway, so I'm just saying, like, that's something that we have available, and it's something that we can do to assist and help. We're not saying you're out there on your own and figure it out. But, again, those are those Brac liaisons that are very helpful, that can say, well, here's something else I've heard, or let me ask Susan, or I know Cynthia knows this because she's done it in the 11th Circuit. So in any event, so Ted, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So, Susan, you mentioned what happened in Southern California. More recently in San Francisco, Jeff Bosley and I thought a social event, a cocktail hour hosted by his firm, Davis Wright, would work. We had about 10 or 12 fellows show up. So I think part of the challenge is, especially in San Francisco, I think people are not going back to downtown yet. So we're thinking about other ways, other things to do. I do remember a very successful program we had a few years ago, pre-COVID. It was hosted by Ogletree, and we had Lynn Hermley at Oric and Alan Axelrod and his firm, who were opposing counsel in the Ellen Powell case, and both are fellows. And they had a roundtable, very open conversation about the case and how it progressed. And then we invited not just fellows, but would-be fellows that we identified as potential nominees. That was very successful. I don't know how many we had, must have 30 people in that small conference room. So something like that, where the college provides unique value, right? That you don't get that kind of program in a normal CLE. And frankly, we all know there's so many CLE opportunities that we need to find a unique kind of offering that the college can offer. So I'm just mentioning that.
Okay.
Let me add one other.
Wait, Barb, hold on one second. I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to skip to Scott Oswald because he needs to leave. And so maybe we can just get his input before we go on.
I'm happy to. Well, just want to begin with what didn't work. And what we found is what many of you found. We can't get people to come down into downtown DC. for events. The thing that we found in calling folks, because we actually split up the lists of all the DC Circuit fellows, and Yona remembers this, and we divvied them up and we called all the fellows, and I'd get somebody and say, listen, I'd love to be there, but I live in North Carolina now. I'd love to be there, but I'm in Cape Cod. Or I'd love to be there, I'm in the wilds of Minnesota, right? I was shocked. I had 20, and I actually wrote it down. 8 of the 20 no longer live in the DC area. After COVID, they moved somewhere else. So I think that's a real a change in how people are operating. And you know, if you're living somewhere like that, you're not going to come back for a seminar. What has worked has been our webinars. I think they've been really well received. We've had excellent responses on these. We started off in 2021. We did civility from the podium, and we had Judge Albert Diaz from the Fourth Circuit, Stephanie Thacker from the Fourth Circuit, and we just talked about the importance of civility in that circuit court, but we also talked about, you know, how cases are assigned, their likes and dislikes. We had a terrific turnout. We had, I think, 160 people that tuned into that. And then we also did a program of civility from the bench. Judge Robert Wilkins of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, Trevor McFadden, who's one of our district judges in D.C., and Robin Merriweather, our magistrate judge, one of our magistrate judges in the federal courthouse. Again, really well received. I think we had over 120 for that one. And then most recently, we did a program which are mediations, and we brought in magistrate judges from the District of Maryland to talk to us about what worked and what didn't work in mediations. Some of the things that we tried to do that have worked, we've co-sponsored with other organizations. That has worked well for us, and we then used it as a platform to encourage membership in the college. So as an example, in our most recent program, Deb Kelly is one of our newest fellows, started out with an introduction to the college, what we did, the kind of programming that we put on, the purpose of the college, and invited those who were with more than 20 years of membership in the practice of employment law to think about potentially putting themselves forward for membership in the college. So hopefully, you know, that'll at least plant the seed. So in sum, I think our webinars have been really successful. Our one try at a in-person social event didn't go so well, but it's fun. We meet every month, right, Yona?
I was going to just kick in really quickly that Scott is a good example and a model to follow, because he has kept us, since he's joined, he's really kept us in line. We put the next meeting on the calendar before the end of the existing meeting, and he sends out sort of what was discussed, and we have a bigger group, and it's more sort of, as I was saying to Lisa and to Barb, it's sort of anarchistic, but there's no leaders. It's like, but the bigger group you have, it doesn't impose so much on any one person. And Scott has, his office has really helped us to stay organized and have Zoom calls to have the meetings late in the afternoon and short. So we really do have a sort of good participation, and different people take the lead. Although I think, Scott, you've done more than your share lately, so we're going to have to pick on some other people. So
great. Thanks, Yona. Barb, does
Yeah,
anybody...
two quick things. One, roundtables is another thing that would work. And that's where you just set an item for discussion that you think is important and have someone host the Zoom conference, and then people just come on for an hour, half an hour even, to talk about what they think is important to the point. Most fellows don't find themselves needing CLEs. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think I'm not atypical. I get more than enough CLE credit in 1 year for my 3-year requirement. But I'll join any roundtable where someone's going to talk about something like confidentiality under the NLRB or whatever, because I remember one time Wayne Outen and I did a discussion on confidentiality, and this was after the IRS rules changed and you couldn't deduct a settlement or the fees that related to a sexual harassment settlement. And Wayne said, that actually hurts us too, because my client doesn't want a non-confidential agreement out there with her saying she was sexually assaulted or whatever. So not going to go into the specifics of it, but roundtables are another way to have it easy to host, costs no money. And to Scott's point and Yona's point, they've done something every month, which just, even if I don't get to be involved every month, it's just nice to know as a member of that region that something's happening that I could hop onto. We did, when COVID happened, we did our welcome to our new fellows twice by Zoom. And we had 25, 30 people on one of the Zooms, and a couple of the board members joined. So the fellows got to talk to Arlene, and it was really fun. We just sent the fellows a bottle of champagne each because, we weren't going to be with them. And the rest of us just had our glass of water or a glass of wine or whatever at the end of the day. And it was really collegial. It made a difference. So that's another example.
Okay. I want to move this along so we can get through all of the circuits. And I know, Ted, I saw your hand up, but maybe we can leave it.
No, I'm done.
Okay. So let's move on to Dean in the Third Circuit.
So Dean just got pegged this week. Did he pop off? No, he's there. Yeah, Dean just got pegged this week. So by Yona. Yona, do you want to say anything about this, like Third Circuit?
Yeah, I can say something very quickly. The Third Circuit we've had a hard time getting people, but and then we got some good people, and I was lax at getting them scheduled. But we're setting up a meeting. We have some good people. We have them from different states. So I probably have the model more like the Minnesota model, where we have different groups doing different things within the various states that are in, and not only states, but as Barb had pointed out, the Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. So Dean is one of my great recruits, and we are going to schedule a meeting as soon as he finishes a big decision he has to get out. And so we have a good group of people. I expect they're going to be doing wonderful things shortly. And thank you, Dean, for coming on so you can share all of this information with the other folks.
Absolutely.
We have great expectations, Dean.
Oh boy.
No pressure. No pressure.
Man.
Okay. Fred, Fourth Circuit.
Well, one thing to realize about the Fourth Circuit is that we are spread out from South Carolina to Maryland and West Virginia. So by way of organization, we've got a committee member in each state. And they have done some things within the state, for example, having a reception to welcome new fellows that is just in that state. For example, West Virginia has done that. It's just not possible for all of us to get together to welcome all the new fellows in the Fourth Circuit. So we've done it state by state. And when we have the annual meeting, which Susan referred to, they have the state representatives have been very good about encouraging the fellows within their state to attend. the thing that has worked very well for us is a liaison with the 11th Circuit and sometimes the 5th, where we have a meeting in February, someplace warm. Like last year it was St. Pete. It worked out very well. We've had good speakers. For example, we had Bill Corbett give an update, and Judge Childs, who has recently been placed on the DC circuit, really stole the show. So that was a good meeting. What hasn't worked is recruitment of employee or union side lawyers. I had a couple picked out that I could not convince that membership in the college would be helpful to them in their practice. So I had Ed Buckley call them, and he couldn't convince them either.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an issue in some places, Fred, but we're really working on it.
Well, I tried and failed, so any pointers in that regard would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, Diane Subley.
And Charlie Warner is also here. So Charlie, if you want to unmute, I think you're here, correct? Maybe
I'm here, yeah.
And there we go. We've had mixed results in the Sixth Circuit. We've had some really good receptions. They are typically held either in the courthouse when it was open, because we had a refurbished Art Deco courthouse in the Eastern District, thanks to one of the chief judges there. And in that situation, we invited the same thing. We invited would-be fellows as well as fellows. Susan was kind enough to come. She and Jen have their email lists available for the fellows. So if in the First Circuit, for example, you were having difficulty reaching people in Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire, you've got two major population centers. I practiced there for a while, and several law firms that would be willing to help you, but you can avoid the state bar by using Susan's email lists and get word out to the fellows. We have really great sponsorship from firms, and everyone on the 4-person committee that I have been lax in expanding with Susan this year because of my hectic schedule. Each of the fellows from each of the disparate states in our circuit, we have Michigan and Kentucky and Tennessee and Ohio, and we all have different geographic configurations and different configurations in terms of the demographics of practice. So we've been specifically reaching out, and each of those fellows and additional firms in Michigan have supported the receptions that we've had that are in person, with some support from Susan. So what she's talking about is with law firm support is really important. During the pandemic, I should mention that the one in person that we actually had Judge Donald come in the year that she became an honorary fellow. Barb, you remember yep. So she flew in from Washington, where she was speaking, to speak to the people in our, and that was in our district courthouse. And that was really well attended. And we like that because it enables us to introduce the new fellows in a longer fashion than we get when we're at, when they're there taking their oath at the annual meeting. It's a lot more collegial. People stay a long time over. The other thing that we did during the pandemic was a true script of, and very efficient Zoom reception for our new fellows. Thank goodness Susan was able to do the IT end of it, but we did have a lot of work done by the entire committee, and making sure that we were trying to reach across demographics. And then we tried to have a sort of 3-minute limit that some breached in non-observance in terms of praising the new fellows, but it moved very well. And people really liked that. So I've been talking with Susan about the possibility of maybe doing some of the civility presentation with both Zoom in the hybrid fashion that I'm used to now, because as an adjunct, I've had to do hybrid as well as in person, to see if we can have a law firm that is large enough to perhaps have a hybrid capability where we'd have the reception there and then be able to accommodate the people who have moved to different places to be closer to their families because of the pandemic, like you have described, like some of the chairs have described before me. And that is a possibility of increasing attendance, even if it is simply social, and maybe then having one very short speaker. If they're, on a current topic, if it's crisis and breaking or something, our folks feel inundated by CLE. So I think Barb is right. We attend roundtables, but not necessarily CLE. So the hope is to have collegiality. And in that respect, Charlie organized a dinner in Ohio where we had a lot of attendance from Ohio fellows in connection with the State Bar of Ohio's annual meeting. And then Eric spoke, right? That was the only speaker we had, Charlie.
Yes.
At that meeting. And
very dry band, yes.
Yes. And I can't thank Charlie enough for the work he did on that. So that was both a social event. It got us into a different area than Detroit. It was well attended by people, not just from Ohio, because I also drove down and there were people closer, somewhat closer. But when we try to do something that involves Kentucky or Tennessee, it is really difficult because they're so far from us. So Susan and I have been talking about not just having the reception or having something here, but perhaps having it in a destination. It's like a destination wedding in Tennessee because it's got Nashville, and then possibly cross circuit. Is there someone here from the 7th Circuit?
No, nobody's here.
Let me address the 7th Circuit because I do serve on that law school forum. So we do outreach to law students that way with a fall forum, and we have a programming committee that tries to bring students and people who are in different areas of practice together so that the students get a sense of practicality. And we choose maybe 3 topics in the morning, I think. And because our students are now so used to Zoom, maybe a hybrid approach to that would avoid having an oversubscription of students who say they will come in person and then do not show on the morning. We do it, I think, on a Friday evening. There's a reception at a law firm, and on Saturday morning we have the program. But it also has, time frame where there can just be groups talking together. So Susan, I remember you saying that Joe Torres, who had actually done so much to make a conference room available, they really had a whole lot of lunches left over, as I recall. So again, I think we need to think about hybrid. And Daryl, I assume you did something nationally so that you were able to use a national, if nothing else, the national ability of one of the law firms to have virtual meetings in several offices and maybe a central meeting in one conference room. Was that how you did it?
Well, we did both. We did the last seminar we did strictly using a Zoom platform across the country. We did the thing back in the fall when we had the event where the government officials came in. We actually tried to affect the whole region. What we did was we had a main office in the New York office, but then for upstate, we arranged with another law firm to provide space in different parts of upstate so people in those areas could go to that office and see via Zoom the conversation going on.
Excellent way to do that. And then Susan was really wonderful lining up IT so that we did just a Zoom conference, but that was through whatever, was it actually Chicago Kent that worked with you or was supposed to work with you for our welcome reception? It was just all you? My gosh, it went well then.
So really briefly, Diane, thank you. That was fantastic. And the idea of hybrid is something else to consider. Thank you.
Yeah.
Charlie and Lisa, I know you're both from the Sixth
Oh my
Circuit.
gosh, I forgot Lisa. I apologize. Hi
Yeah.
there.
Okay. So Charlie, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, we've done 2 sessions a year for many years now. The spring and the fall, usually having a government speaker. You might call them CLEs, but we don't try to get the credit. And we've been doing it virtually, of course, for the last while. Before that, we used to gather all in one place in Columbus, which was more convenient for everybody in this state of Ohio. And then at one point, because our firm had, capability in Washington, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, etc., we had groups in each of those locations. And then now everybody's comfortable, I think, with just doing the Zoom. And we intend to continue that approach. We would love to, do more. I will share the frustration of another speaker here about getting people involved. I, nominated 2 of the best attorneys I know around on the plaintiff side. Both joined and both dropped it after a year. And I was really disappointed because they're the best. And I'm not sure how we change that. We've have a small group of 3 of us who represent management, union, and plaintiffs on our committee. And so, yeah, we try to pick diverse topics, and there's some ideas here that have been talked about that I will certainly consider and think about doing, but it's been going along well so far.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. Lisa?
Well, we haven't had much going on at all in Tennessee. We're pretty much moribund. We need to get, with the program. I will say that Kentucky we just don't even have very many Kentucky fellows, let alone be able to do any kind of programming. So I welcome, I've just been tapped for this, so I would welcome any ideas. We have plenty of fellows in Memphis, some in Nashville, but for those of you who don't know that, Memphis and Nashville don't get along very well. So it's going to be a real task to try to find something that unites everybody. But as for Memphis, we haven't done any programming at all in a long time.
Although you did used to.
Yeah. When Maurice was alive, we did it. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
So Lisa, I can help you with lawyers in both Memphis and Nashville if you want at some point.
Okay.
And then there was, before Maurice passed away, of course, he and Judge Donald did that conference at the University of Memphis, I believe.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it should be a list there as well.
Oh, we've got plenty of people. It just hasn't been happening. Participation, I hope we can get people involved. I think involving the law school in Memphis would probably be a good idea, because we've got lots of aspiring who would jump at a chance to have a program like this. And maybe with potential upcoming members, we should think about doing something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Lisa, is Waverly Crenshaw in the college in the area?
He's a federal judge now. I don't know. I don't think he's a member of. I don't remember if he's a member of the college.
Because he's a very seasoned labor employment practitioner. I know him very well. And I think if you might just film him and Judge Donald, you might be able to put together a program to combine and maybe bring both of them together.
Yeah, I mean, Judge Donald is a frequent flyer, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if and she's a lovely, wonderful person, but I just don't think people are just dying for CLE around here. So I think it needs to be something more interesting.
Okay, Lisa, have you considered using the Memphis sanitation strike?
Yes.
And
well, I'm on the board of the Civil Rights Museum, so yeah, I mean, we've done that kind of. Unfortunately, we've done that a lot too. I mean, Maurice just did that the video about that, so and it's part of our history here in Memphis. I'm not sure whether that's gonna. It may get people from other places, but in Memphis, it's pretty well known. So I don't know whether that'll be a seller or not. And the EEO committee of the ABA just had a meeting here where they took everybody through the Civil Rights Museum. So it's an idea, but
I was at the National Bar Annual last summer and went there for the first time, and it's extraordinary.
yes, it is. I don't disagree, but for Memphians, I'm just not sure if it would be a super big draw.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. So let's see, we don't have anybody for the 7th Circuit, and 8th Circuit.
9th Circuit.
I addressed 8th already, so I think we could just maybe ask Diane to tell about the 10th when the time.
Yeah.
Okay. 9th Circuit.
Nobody's on here from the 9th Circuit.
Right. Okay. 10th Circuit, we don't have anybody.
But Diane King has been doing, like, she's been helping Larry, so she can speak to that.
Right. Go ahead, Diane. Sorry. You're muted.
You'd think I would have that figured out by now. Sorry about that. So the 10th Circuit, we've been really creative because we hadn't really been doing much. And so the first thing we did, besides a couple of remote cocktail parties, was I had a friend of mine who was in Afghanistan, who was slated to come talk about women's rights in Afghanistan. And it was supposed to be in person, but it ended up being remote. And he ended up talking just about his experience there, which I thought was fascinating. It was a lot of fun. And we had a pretty good attendance. I think a lot of people on the board attended, and folks asked good questions. The other thing, we've done a couple of other things, most of which have been successful that I plan to build on, one of which was not at all successful. We had a cocktail party at Polson late in the afternoon. It was pretty well attended in person. I think we had 13 to 15, which is about what we expected. And it was beautiful. And the setting was beautiful. The law firm provided the refreshments, and so they paid for everything. It was mixed. It was Zoom and in person, although I don't think we had many Zoom folks. But we had a wonderful time. We did have an agenda which nobody followed. And afterwards, people just wanted to hang around and talk because I was on the edge of COVID. So folks did come downtown, which I was pleased about. The other thing that we did, and Larry and I did this together, and it was just late. I mean, it kept getting pushed. We wanted to do something in the fall, and then it kept getting pushed and pushed. So finally, it ended up being December. And my advice to all of you is don't do anything in December. It was just like even folks who said they would come, which wasn't many, didn't come. So we had very few people come. We actually moved it from the law firm. We're gonna have it over at Littler, just to a restaurant. Instead of canceling it, which I'm still have mixed feelings about. But the speaker came. It was really casual, and we had only a couple of members that were not part of the planning committee come. But it was, we had a good time. So luckily that piece of it turned out. And the lawyer that was there that I've had a number of cases against said I didn't have my plaintiff's horns on that day. So I take that as a compliment. The next thing that we did that was very successful was that we had something over at the law school at DU. We have a new member, Roberto Corrado, who's a professor there. And it ended up costing a little bit of money for the college just because we had to do it at the law school. The law students came straight from class. We had really good attendance. And the panel was about professions in law relating to labor and employment. So we had two panels. One was kind of the more traditional labor side, and the other was employment side. And we had government and private lawyers. And I think we should do that every year, every other year. It really was well attended. And I don't know if we want to look at doing it at the CU next year and alternate between CU and DU, but that was a good program for law students, not for our members. This fall, we are going to have something relating to legal updates, and Roberto Corrado has agreed to either speak or get a speaker for us. I'm thinking that we should actually split it in two because we've had such an active legislature in Colorado with Dems in the majority in the House, Senate, and the governor, we've passed quite a bit that relates to employment law. So we might want to do a state and a U.S. Supreme Court CLE. So that's coming. The thing that we haven't done a great job at, besides the Christmas CLE, is recruiting. And what I figured out, and Larry and I have talked about this, is that we need to talk about it and think about it all year long. Because we were in this habit of, when it was close to the deadline, then talking about it and calling people, and people would be out of town, or we would have to have some time to educate them about the college. And I think he and I are much more on the ball. We already have like 3 or 4 people that are interested, that we're recruiting to join the college. So I think we've learned some lessons from that. But I think the idea for us is just whatever works. We're also really interested in the mentor program. So we had a conference call to get some information about that, and I suspect that we will be working on that as well. We don't focus on CLEs. Nobody has complained about that. So I'm not inclined to do that because it's hard to get speakers that way. But I think it's just whatever works. If you have something interesting, see if they'll come talk. And Susan and Jen do a great job of publicizing it. So and try to go someplace where there's Zoom capability so that you can have some international play. And for the 10th Circuit, we really don't have much outside of Denver. So I think that's something that once Denver gets well established and kind of is going, that I want to look at changing as well.
Great, Diane. Thanks for everything. You've done some really creative programming, and I think that's great. We are starting to lose people, and we're beyond our allotted time. So if anybody has anything else they want to say before we close, I just want to say thank you for attending. Hopefully people have gotten something out of this through the exchange of ideas, and we are here to help Barb, Susan, I, any way we can, and don't hesitate to contact us. I don't want to cut anybody off that might have anything else to say. Great. Thanks again for your.
Thank you, everyone.
That's-
Thank
Have a
you.
good holiday.